Grandma, how old are you?
I am 98 years old.
98 years old.
Last November.
Last November. Long time, Grandma. Now, I talked to Mom Cabal about what it was like 60 years ago when she was a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back about 87 years from now to when you were a little girl. Let's say to 1888. How old would you have been in 1888?
I would be 12.
12. Now, I'd like to ask you some questions about uses of energy. Where did you live, Grandma, first?
We lived here. You mean first that I remember?
No, where did you live in 1888?
Oh, right here in Table Rock.
In town.
Just a block from the schoolhouse.
Now, what form of energy did you use for your home heating?
Coal.
All right, can you tell me a little more about it?
Well, hard coal. And we had a stove that was called a base burner. And it had mica glass all around it, and it was a beautiful thing at night. Beautiful. Lots of times we never lit the lamps because that is shone out all through the room, you know. Now, it would stop me when you don't want it.
What kind of energy did you use for cooking?
It must have been wood.
Fine. What kind, did you have any electricity at all?
No,
None whatsoever.
none whatsoever.
All right, what did you use for lights?
Kerosene
Kerosene lamps.
lamps.
What form of transportation did you use?
Horse and buggy.
Did you go out of town very often?
Not very often.
All right. When you did go out of town, where did you go and how far?
7 miles to Pawnee.
And what would be a reason you would go out of town?
Usually to get winter clothing.
Fine. Now, Grandma, you didn't have any electricity at all, so what did you do with your food? Mom said they had an ice box.
Yeah. Well, I can't remember that we had one, but I know that we had a bucket and we'd put our butter and milk and things in, you know, and then hang them in the well. The rope tied around the pumps.
Okay.
Now, that was a long time ago, though.
Now, you didn't have any electricity. Did you have anything you used gas for? None whatsoever.
Nothing.
All right. Now, you used kerosene for your lamps, right? Where did you get your kerosene?
I just can't remember, only that my father had a 5-gallon can, and he'd take it and go somewheres and get, and that 5 gallons would last us a long time, you know, with just the lamps.
Now,
But where he got it, here in town somewhere, but I don't know what kind of a place sold it.
all right. Now, what did your father do?
He was a carpenter.
And your mother?
Mother was I suppose we'd say midwife.
All right, she went out and helped the doctor.
She went with the doctor to find babies.
All right, how did she travel?
She always went with the doctor. He always took her.
With a horse and buggy?
Yes. Oh, he had a team. He had
Team.
2 horses.
Okay. Now, you were a little girl in 1888. Could you tell us a little something about the blizzard?
Yes, I could. I could tell you a lot about it. Oh, and are you tuned in? Well, it was a beautiful day. And of course, I always went home for dinner. And I went home for dinner, left my coat, my mittens, something over my head, and went back with just my clothes on.
To school?
Yeah, back to school at noon. Well, along about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, before recess, there was a big black cow came up in the house. The schoolhouse got just as dark, and pretty soon the wind came up from the north, and such a wind as it was. And then started to snow and turned cold fast. Well, the teacher, the school was dismissed, and I just had a block to go, and I was down as much as I was up all that way home. When I got home,
Why were you down?
wind.
You couldn't stand up in it?
And well, we wore long dresses down to our ankles, and I told, one time is this all recorded?
Go ahead.
One time I was telling this up at school, and I told the girls up there they wouldn't be bothered that way. Now with their dresses clear to their knees, it wouldn't bother them, but it would just take you down, just like blowing against something you couldn't get away from. And I was down, and when I got home, my hands were practically frozen. And Mother knew right away what to do, and she put them in a pan of cold water, and I know I cried. And I said, Mama, why do you put those in cold water? When they were just about frozen, but she said that was the way to thaw them out. Warm water wouldn't have done. But I know I cried. They were hurting so bad anyway. And the storm raged on all night, blowing and snowing, and my father was teaching at that time. He always taught in the winter west of town, and he rode horseback to school, and he and the boys put the horse in this coal bin and cob bin, and the door was so close to the ground that maybe you don't want to put all this in.
Go ahead.
Was so close to the ground that it wouldn't open clear up, enough for the horse to get in. So Father just took a knife and took the door off the hinges, put the horse in there, and put the door back on. And some of the kiddies had a little bit left of their lunch in their lunchbox, and they divided. Father said that he didn't eat any because he wanted the kiddies to have it. I think he had 17 pupils, if I remember right. And he said that was all they had to eat, and kiddies are crying, and they had plenty of water. They had water to drink, but nothing. And the boys had carried in fuel, and they had fuel all around the stove. Father said just pour it on the floor. Didn't have coal buckets enough, but they just brought it in and poured it on the floor. So they kept warm all winter, all night.
Did they burn coal or wood?
They burned coal.
Coal.
They were burning coal. And the next morning, Father said about daylight, farm wagons came driving in. Parents, mothers, and almost in hysterics, wondering what had happened to the kiddies. And they said they came driving in, got their children, and Father rode his horse on home. And my mother was just about in hysterics, of course. She was a very nervous, high-strung woman anyway. And she figured that Papa tried to come home, and that he'd been no telling what happened. But he came riding his horse in along the middle of the forenoon, and everything was all right.
Okay.
But it was a terrible storm. Cold. I would just wonder now, in later years, just how cold it was. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was 30 or 40 below zero.
And it really had a strong wind.
Oh, and that strong wind. And the girls, all their dresses just wrapping. Why, it just made it just like it was blowing against a wall. Down we'd go. That's all the way I could do anything.
Okay.
And get up and go again, just a block. And I was down as much as I was up, I know.
You practically crawled home then.
And could, huh?
You practically
Yes,
crawled home.
yes. I know I was awful glad when I went in that back door. And my hands were hurting me so bad.
Now, your sister, was she at school?
I can't remember one thing about her.
How she got home
How
or
she
where
got
she
home
was?
or anything about it. It's just a blank.
Okay. Thank you very much, Grandma.
Now, is that